From the Gospel according to St. John, chapter 19. Then they led Jesus from the house of Caiaphas to the praetorium. It was early. They themselves did not enter the praetorium, so that they might not be defiled, but might eat the Passover. So Pilate went out to them and said, "What accusation do you bring against this man?" They answered him, "If this man were not an evildoer, we would not have handed him over." Pilate said to them, "Take him yourself, and judge him by your own law." The Jews said, "It is not lawful for us to put any man to death." This was to fulfill the word which Jesus had spoken, to show by what death he was to die. Pilate entered the praetorium again and called Jesus and said to him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus answered, "Do you say this of your own accord? Or did others say it to you about me?" Pilate answered, "Am I a Jew? Your own nation and the chief priests have handed you over to me. What have you done?" Jesus answered, "My kingdom is not of this world. If my kingdom were of this world, my servants would fight that I might not be handed over to the Jews. But my kingship is not from the world." Pilate said to him, "So you are a king?" Jesus answered, "You say that I am a king. For this I was born, and for this I have come into the world, to bear witness to the truth. Everyone who is of the truth hears my voice." Pilate said to him, "What is truth?" Whatever Pontius Pilate was, he can't have been a fool. You didn't get to be the procurator of a Roman province if you weren't up to the job, and you certainly didn't stay there for 10 years as Pilate did in Judea. And he was both the military and the civil authority in Judea, which was unusual. Of course, Judea itself was an unusual place. It was full of Jews, who were quite unlike the peoples that Rome was used to dealing with. Jews were volatile. They were touchy about matters of religion. And this all came to a head once a year at Passover. We don't know what the population of Jerusalem was exactly, but something between 20 and 40,000 most of the year. But at Passover, nearer to 250,000, most of them men. And Pilate had to keep order amongst this huge crowd with no more than 4,300 troops, 1 legion. The next help was in Syria, many days' march away. No wonder he was twitchy at the thought of his men being outnumbered 60 to 1. So when the chief priest and others demand the punishment of Jesus, he faces a dilemma. If the offence is religious, that's a matter for them. It can only involve him if it's a political charge. And if the Jews want Jesus crucified, they have to show that the charge is a serious one. Pilate doesn't want to be thought to be acting unreasonably or without due cause. And the Jews find a charge. Luke chapter 23 explains it. They began to accuse him, saying, "We found this man perverting our nation, forbidding us to pay taxes to the emperor, and saying that he himself is the Messiah, a king." Then Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" He answered, "You say so." Despite this, Pilate is initially unconvinced. But finally, as we know, he agrees to the crucifixion of Jesus, who is led out to Calvary and nailed to a cross. But crucifixion is meant to be a deterrent, and it can't deter people who don't know why it's being inflicted on a criminal. So it's customary to fix a placard above the victim's head, so that people will know what he's done to deserve this awful punishment. And Pilate dictates the wording he wants. Jesus of Nazareth, King of the Jews, written in Latin, Hebrew and Greek, so that everyone who sees it will understand it. And the chief priests object. "Don't write the King of the Jews," they say. "Write, this man said, I'm the King of the Jews." Pilate tells them, "What I've written, I have written." If it were merely an outlandish claim, he could ignore it. Jesus only merits punishment if he is the King of the Jews. That's not what the priests wanted to hear, but Pilate is adamant. "What I have written, I have written." So now we know why Jesus died. Except, of course, that he didn't, did he? It's why Pilate killed him, but it's not why Jesus died. He died for our sins. What should have been written on that placard are all the things that we have done, except they don't make placards big enough. This is a time for us to remember what should have been on there, and what a difference it's made to us that Jesus chose to pay the penalty for our sins and to rub them all out. As St. Paul tells us in his epistle to the Romans, chapter 5, "For while we were still weak, at the right time, Christ died for the ungodly." Indeed, rarely will anyone die for a righteous person, though perhaps for a good person someone might actually dare to die. But God proves his love for us in that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Many of us don't think of ourselves as great sinners. There are worse people around, we say. Well, maybe there are. But there are plenty of things in our own lives we wish we hadn't done. Things we can't put right now ourselves. We could all do with a clean sheet, a blank placard. And now, thanks to Jesus, we can have one. Are we sorry? We should be. Are we grateful? We should be. Are we his? We should be.